Welcome to the ECDL module for word processing, section 2.2.1. Here we have to understand how to display and hide something called non-printing formatting marks, which include spaces, paragraph marks, manual line break marks, and tab characters. So let's go back into Microsoft Word, and here we can see a standard document. There are paragraphs, there are line breaks, there are spaces, and there are tabs. The thing is, we can't actually see any of them. Well, yes, you can see a space and you can see there's probably a tab here. But is that a tab or is that just a series of spaces? It's not always so obvious. If I was to type a couple of spaces and then press tab, can you actually see exactly where the spaces and the tab begin and end? No, you can't. The trick here is that Microsoft Word can, because it puts in what we call hidden formatting marks. So whenever you type a space like that, 3 spaces, there are actually 3 invisible symbols there that you can display if you want to. And that does make it a bit easier if you want to see exactly how many spaces you've typed without having to count manually using the arrow keys or something. So how do you show these formatting marks, which are normally hidden? Well, it's actually quite straightforward. You'll need to go to the Home tab and then head along to the Paragraph section here. Now at the top right corner of this, you'll see what looks like a funny backward letter P. This is actually the Pilcrow symbol, and if we click on that, this toggles on all of the formatting marks which are normally hidden. Now there are 4 of these you need to be able to identify. The first and most obvious one is this Pilcrow or backward P paragraph mark symbol. And you can see that these appear at the end of every single paragraph. That's exactly what they are. These are simply paragraph marks. Every time we press the Enter key, we start a new paragraph. And so we can see exactly where those paragraphs end using that symbol. Now a second symbol that we can see is this one here, which looks a little like a downward arrow pointing to the left, which is the exact same symbol you'll find on the Enter key or the Return key on your keyboard. Now that's a line break, starting a new line break. That's different to pressing the Enter key. If you just press the Enter key, then you start a new paragraph. However, if you hold the Shift button down and then you press Enter, you start a new line. And lines, as you can see here, are closer together. There's no gap between them. With paragraphs, you can see that there's a gap or a space underneath each paragraph. Whereas this list here has no gaps between them, or certainly not as big as the gaps between each paragraph. So if you're doing a list of items, you don't want them spread out so each item's in its own paragraph. You want them together as effectively a list that forms a paragraph by itself. So you can see where you've done the Shift Enter instead of just an ordinary Enter here with this symbol. Now you'll also spot a third symbol, and that's this little arrow pointing to the right, and that's the Tab character. So here, if I was to press Tab, you can see exactly where I've typed tab, how many tabs I've got. That symbol's quite obvious to see. And you can finally see the spaces because of the dots. You'll notice between each word, instead of a space, there's a little dot halfway up the line. So that's the formatting symbol for a space. Now you might remember at the beginning I typed 2 spaces and a tab, and it was very difficult to really see what was going on. However, if I press 2 spaces and a tab now, it's very obvious where my spaces are, where my tab is, how many times I've pressed space, and so forth. So if I was to type space 6 times, it's going to be a lot easier to see that here, especially if we zoom in, than it would be if those characters were hidden. So that's how to display the formatting marks. And remember, we've got the paragraph mark, line break, tab, and space, those 4 different formatting marks. To hide them, it's as simple as going back up to this Pilcrow symbol or formatting symbol and just clicking it again, and that hides all of those formatting marks. So it's a simple toggle on, toggle off. Simple as that. Now, if you're doing the ECDL exam and you've not run into any difficulties, you just wanted to know where that button was, then this video should at this point be enough for you. However, I have come across a number of people, especially using Word 2013, which this is, who have had difficulty trying to display the tab character. So I've had people pressing the tab key, going back into this little formatting mark here, and instead of seeing this little forward arrow, they've just seen a space, and it seems very difficult to display that mark. So if you found that, and in fact if you haven't even tried it yourself now, and you go onto Word and you click that little paragraph symbol there, and you find that your tabs are not displaying, you just get spaces, then probably you've run into this same problem. So let me show you first of all what people try to do, and then I'll show you what actually works. So first of all, what people try to do is, if they go into the File menu and down to Options, they go to Display, and you can see here we have a list of all of the different formatting marks, the 4 that you need to understand for the ECDL exam, so tab, space, paragraph, and actually we haven't got the manual line break listed in here, but I think that's automatically included with paragraph marks anyway. But you can automatically include all of those, and in fact we can click any of these we want, and it will automatically be displayed while we're typing, regardless of what we have pressed up here. So if I press tab characters, for example, and I click OK, then even though this Pilcrow button hasn't been pressed, I can still see the tab key, and if I press tab I will see that even though this option's not chosen. So I can choose, so File, Options, Display, I can choose to always show some particular formatting marks regardless. Incidentally, those won't print. If I was to print the document with any of those formatting marks displayed, those would not print. But, as I said, some people have run into difficulties because even when they've gone into this display panel and checked the tab characters, they're still not seeing the tab symbol when they press this button here. So what's going on? Well, in fact, what's going on is that Microsoft Word is trying to be a little bit clever, and when you press tab, it's not actually inserting a tab. It's applying an indent to your paragraph. And an indent is something entirely different to a tab. So what we need to do is to go into File, down to Options, and then go to Proofing. Once you're in Proofing, you'll need to click on Autocorrect Options, and then make sure that you're in the Auto Format as you type section of this. Now at the bottom you'll see here we've got an option for set left and first indent with tabs and backspaces. That's not ticked in my case, but you'll probably find that unless you've gone into this yourself, that will be ticked. Let me show you what happens when we tick that box. I'm going to click OK again, and I'm going to press tab at the top there. Now you've seen me do this already a couple of times, and you know that down here I've got tabs and the tab symbol. You would expect now, if I was to click on this Pilcrow button, the formatting marks button, to see an arrow here as down here. Let's see what happens when I do. You see, I've clicked on that formatting mark, and whilst these that were originally here are still being displayed, my tab symbol is not displayed here. And the reason is that's not a tab, that's an indent. Microsoft Word has changed what you're doing. Yes, it's still lined up with the other tabs, it's kept the same distance, and if I was to press tab again, same thing would happen. But we're not getting the tab character. So if you're a student that's struggling to try and display the tab character for the ECDL exam, Or indeed, if you're a teacher who's been struggling to try and find out how to solve this problem for a student, then the answer is to go into File, Options, Proofing, Autocorrect Options, Auto Format as you type, and then untick this option at the bottom that says Set Left and First Indent with tabs and backspaces. Now if I click OK and click OK again, let's just go back where we were here to the beginning. So now if I press Tab, you see I get the tab symbol, as I should normally. So if you have been finding that particular symbol does not appear, that's the answer. I hope that helps you. That's all you need to know really for the ECDL exam as far as hiding and displaying formatting marks are concerned. But just be aware that you might possibly need to identify any one of those 4 formatting marks. So as well as knowing how to show and hide them, it's a good idea if you have some idea of what to expect, what you can see, and which symbol is which.